everybody, welcome back to this special episode of Cinemadness, the podcast. We are back with our good friend David Weiner, the director of In Search of Tomorrow, which we did earlier this year, as he pointed out, and for the upcoming final chapter in Search of Darkness, Part 3, coming out in November?
It's coming out now. You got to get it now before Halloween. 80shorrordoc.com, and we'll explain why. But you have between now and Halloween to get it. And then once you get it, it comes out as a digital copy, and then we send it out.
I cannot wait.
Yeah.
So, did 3 movies. It's over 15 hours now of just 80s horror. Did you think it was going to go this far? Did you plan for 3, or?
It was all a master plan that I hoped would fall into place, kind of like the bad guy in Skyfall, where I wanted to arrange James Bond to be standing right where the tube was going to explode and a train was going to fall on him, and it was all going to be conveniently right in that spot. That's sort of like an arcane reference, just because I've been in James Bond land lately. But
so have I.
It's one of those things. It's one of those things where it's just like you could intricately plan something, but usually, best laid plans go to waste. But all I could say is going back to In Search of Darkness Part 1, that was released in this time in 2019. We hoped for the best, and we were proud of our work, having crowdfunded a documentary about 80s horror, and going from 1980 to 1989. Number of movies in between, larger context chapters in between, about 50 people from the era in front of the camera, behind the camera, luminaries like, John Carpenter, Heather Langenkamp, Cassandra Peterson, Barbara Crampton, the list goes on and on and on. We were so happy, and we just hoped it would resonate. And people responded and said, we want more. And we did Part 2, and people responded even more and said, we want more. And we said, we must oblige. And we could dive all into it. But, the short answer is no, absolutely not. But I couldn't be more pleased about it.
So are we. The fans are absolutely just champing at the bit for more 80s horror. I wanted to ask a quick, maybe sneak peek. Will you be covering Pulse in Part 3?
Oh, so you want me to reveal the titles in the movies?
Just no one I talk to.
Direct question. Well, listen, I could tell you this. I like to keep the list mostly a secret, so there are surprises.
Okay.
What's cool about In Search of Darkness Part 3 is that by the time we were hitting this third film, which is the longest In Search of Darkness out of all the In Search of Darkness movies. So the other 2 were 4.5 hours. This one is 5 hours and change.
Hell yeah.
And it's long because everyone said, make it long. And we wanted to involve you guys, the backers, the community, who all said, we love this in Part 1. We love this in Part 2. But how, of all things, could you miss Pulse? What a crime, could you miss Extra? What an awful thing it is that you didn't include X, Y, or Z. But there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of movies that came out, no exaggeration, in one of the greatest decades of cinema ever. We will never be able to get to all of them. So I will say as a blanket statement that one movie that you just hope is in there, probably not in there. But please don't be upset. There's so many other cool movies in there.
I'll never be upset.
I do my best to accommodate everybody. So don't get your hopes up. Maybe lower your expectations, and potentially you'll be surprised. And I guarantee you I'll still get the angry mail. But I do what I can.
I'm super excited for this one. The trailers show that it's mostly the straight-to-video stuff, the stuff that, maybe we missed in the theater, and that's all the trashy horror that I absolutely loved from my childhood. So
he says lovingly.
Yes, yes.
Lovingly.
Yes. Trashy horror is the best horror. What did Allison call it? The body exploding.
I called it the body exploding creepy creature movies.
There you
Yeah,
go.
well, like what's left you just got to blow things up, blow up bodies and things like that. That's where your budget goes. It's just like
Mhm.
you don't pay the actors, and at the end, the big explosion literally has to be an explosive body, and
Mhm.
we have exploding. Listen, spoiler alert: we have some exploding bodies in this film.
Damn right you do. Um, I love the evolution from the first movie, and even in the second movie where he went into more of the actors' backgrounds and the you covered Giallo between In Search of Darkness 2 and the rise of Shudder. The term Giallo has become more and more a household name thanks to you guys, and I've been introducing more people to Italian horror now that I can show them like the little sections of your movie.
Well,
And
happy I could be part of the conversation, and if people learn about Giallo from In Search of Darkness Part Two, that really pleases me. But I think we're part of a larger conversation that really sort of directs people in the right direction when they want to find stuff. I mean, if anything, I think the In Search of Darkness movies are sort of this ultimate curation list. It's a big discussion and celebration of a whole decade. But as we go movie by movie, we're obviously adding more and more films. We're adding 79 new films that we cover individually on
wow,
this one, which is more than the previous ones. And yeah, so it's a celebration of all of this stuff, and it's a curation of very specific movies. This time, again, as you mentioned, a lot of straight to video, lots of shot on video, lots of theatrical stuff that was, a short window, just didn't get love from us before, might have been in a drive-in movie and disappeared, kind of like Blood Rage, for
yeah,
example. And a lot of international stuff that we still have yet to go to that and talk about that I love that people are discovering movies, whether it's around now, like spooky season, or just year round, and they just want to expand their knowledge of one of the greatest decades of cinema. I keep on saying it, but it really is. I mean,
it is.
it was an explosion of content and material, and we keep on going back to it, whether it's nostalgia or just literally to study it. It's fascinating.
So when doing research for this interview with you, I was listening to some other interviews that you've done in the past and things of that sort. And you actually touched on the international films. Now, Giallo was really big and really turned a lot of people on in the second one. What do you think? And I know you're a big fan yourself, but what do you think that potentially could be the talking point or the new Giallo, if you will, from the dark or Into Darkness, In Search of Darkness 3? Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Listen, half the time I call Into Search of Darkness in search of tomorrow, and half the time I call In Search of Tomorrow in search of darkness, and half the time, well, three times out of three, I'm not sure which part I'm talking about. It's a good problem to have, but well, we really go into Asian horror this time. We have a chapter on Asian horror that really talks about a lot of the influences of Asian horror that really went global in the 90s, but there was plenty of 80s horror to chew on, sorry, 80s Asian horror to chew on from a variety of different countries: Japan, Thailand, Taiwan, Korea. I mean, just Indonesia, the Philippines. And it's really interesting to see the disparity, whether it was, Hong Kong cinema or Filipino cinema, what made it over to the United States, especially in the 80s, which was next to impossible to find titles. But with the explosion of J horror in the 90s, with Ring and The Grudge and things like that got remade for American audiences, that's the stuff where all of a sudden all this, just a wealth of material started finding its way to video stores domestically in North America. And so it's really kind of interesting because that was sort of an untapped resource in the 80s, where if culturally you knew where to find it in the 80s, but your standard mom and pop shop or Blockbuster especially, you know, they had next to nothing. So we cover a bunch of those titles and discuss that, and sort of how it's really been a subsequent discovery of a lot of this great filmmaking that happened after the 80s, just in retrospect, when you look back and talk about this decade.
Now, just to follow up on that, you talked about Japanese horror. Did I also hear correctly on previous interviews with some of the other circuits that you've been doing that you also picked some movies from Canadian horror and Mexican horror? Can you speak a little bit more to that without giving too much of?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it. You know, I want to reward you for your research. You've done your research.
See, guys, it pays off. I'm going, fuck you.
Yeah, well, where you know, Mexican horror and Spanish horror, I really wanted to expand, and so we went to Mexico City and sat down with Ruben Galindo Jr., who did a trio of really great movies in the late '80s, Cemetery of Horror, Don't Panic, and such. And he is just he's got an infectious laugh. He's got a sense of humor about his stuff. And he was inspired by everything from just 80s horror. He went to school at UCLA, I believe. And, but he, you know, he'd see Thriller, Michael Jackson's Thriller. Yeah. His dad, who was a filmmaker who did luchador films, he did like El Santo films, El Santo versus a monster type of films. He's like, you should do like Thriller, but a movie like that. And he's like, that's a great idea. Thus you get like Cemetery of Terror. So it's very cool to have him on board to talk about that kind of stuff. In terms of the Canadian horror, I just wanted to sort of take at least a moment to single out, I mean, a number of titles, but to point out that a lot of Canadian horror kind of goes under the radar because it's English speaking. You have a lot of American actors in it. But there's a thing called Canucksploitation that started in the late 70s and the early 80s that really was just a fun, fancy term for the Canadian government giving tax breaks and incentives to producers and productions to shoot more Canadian films. And so, you know, David Cronenberg is connected to the Canadian horror movement in his early career, especially. But there are films like My Bloody Valentine, The Gate, you know, Rock and Roll Nightmare and Black Roses, Prom Night. That's all Canadian stuff. But people just don't necessarily know it, especially if you have like Jamie Lee Curtis starring in Prom Night. There's no way you're going to know. So it's kind of interesting to be able to take a moment and celebrate and understand that there's a lot of Canadian horror that you just don't know is Canadian horror. Curtains, you know, or maybe the nadir, arguably, which is Things. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that.
Oh, Things, not the greatest movie, but it's a fun movie. It
must be celebrated.
That's right.
The Thing.
Yes, yes. Things, I just saw Things not too long ago too, and I was like, if this can get made, I can get a movie made. So I'm.
If Things exist for no other reason than to inspire you to say, I could do that, if not better, then all power to the filmmakers and to you.
It's right up there with Feeders.
Feeders.
Now,
or Birdemic, right?
Right.
when we met last for In Search of Tomorrow, yeah, there you go.
See, I told you.
Right. But when we met last in Search of Tomorrow, I made the comment that what I love about your long documentaries is it's like hanging out with you for like 4 hours and say, hey man, check this movie out. You know, just like we're buds, just like we all do, like all your fans do. You know, just hang out and say, hey, have you seen, you know, Bad Boys 2? Have you seen Critters 2? So on and so forth. Let's compare the original Prom Night with the remake of Prom Night with Brittany Sue. And it's like that conversation that we have. And that's one thing where, to me, the 5 hours that you're going to have in this one always runs quick. It's a very quick 4 hours on the previous film. And I am looking forward to seeing this next installment because of what you're telling me with the international flavor. You know, I get to practice my Duolingo in different languages while green. That's going to be a lot of fun. Trust me. Wait for it, guys. But now, if I may ask a question, because I was trying to sell it to my wife, who is not me, who's not Allison nor Adam.
I'm not his wife.
No, me either.
Just rub it in my face, okay? That would hurt. Anyways. But no. To continue on, now my wife, she enjoyed sitting through, but she did ask a question for me to ask to you. She goes, "Why the long documentary? Why the 5 hours or 4 hours for what she said? Is it possible? Has it ever been in the books to just make them shorter, bite-sized versions like A&E's biography, where you have 44 minutes, 45 minutes?" If I may ask that question, if not, I can move on. We can trim it out.
Yeah, that's a valid question, and it's a question that I get more often than I can count.
I didn't get that in my research. Sorry, man.
Well, no. Listen, you didn't skip. I want to answer your wife's question. I want to let her understand that these are crowd-funded projects, and so in order to make a series, it takes a lot more time. It takes a lot more money. It takes a lot more resources. And the end of the rainbow of that usually is some sort of distribution entity that's already been an investor or is part of the distribution process where there's an end game to do that. Sometimes you lose your creativity doing that. Sometimes you don't. You get to retain your creativity. But this always started at the very beginning as a crowd-funded project that never was supposed to be 4 hours. It was supposed to be maybe 2.5, maybe 3 hours total. But as soon as it was decided that we were going to do 1980 to 1989, a bunch of movies in there, and then all these chapters, larger context in between. So I can't do it without doing this and doing this. It's like body language. It's like,
don't worry about
hand storyboarding is what it is.
Right, exactly. It's like muscle memory. Even if I'm not in my sleep, I do this actually. but by doing that, it just by demands of the structure, it extends the length of the film. We have talked about many times the possibility of approaching these things differently, but this is a trilogy of like-minded films that is one continuous, it's like you go through a 4.5-hour movie, then it's a reset with brand new material but same structure, then it's a reset, brand new material but the same structure for consistency in response to what people have responded to very positively. And it's a labor of love. It just takes a lot of work, but that's kind of what we sort of have decided that this is going to be. Future projects probably is going to be different, but nothing has been decided and how we figure it out, but it has to be sustainable in terms of the effort that we make these films. So, to be determined. Perhaps one day we'll do another decade or a particular subject where we literally are doing our type of things for a TV show, or 40, whatever the time is, 42 minutes, so you can put in commercials. But please tell your wife that the intention was to start off slow and a shorter running time, but the demands of the structure made it a long film, and then we stayed with that for consistency and based on demand of the enthusiasm of people backing the project. But she can press pause at any given time. It's pretty easy if she wants to watch only a year and a chapter and then walk away and come back the next day, or however it best suits her. That can still sustain itself and arguably be just the same as watching a series.
Yeah, but sir, to be honest with you, in my house there is no stopping. If I have to sit and binge watch whatever she chooses, no, there is no stopping. No, this is a wonderful train that we're going to enjoy. I believe your editor is Samuel Way, correct?
Samuel Way, the super Samuel Way, and he's back for part 3. So this is the 4th movie we've worked on together, the trilogy and In Search of Tomorrow. And he just, I let you say the words, but he just makes it fly, and he's just magic when he puts these things together.
Yeah, I can't speak for everybody, but these are the fastest 4 and 5 hours I've ever spent. Like, I turn it on, And then when it gets to maybe 1986, 1987, I get sad because I'm like, oh, it's almost over. And there's still like an hour and a half left. And I don't know. It's just what you, Samuel, and Robin Block have done have just made it an absolute joy to watch 4 to 5 hours at a time of the same subject matter. You're like the pop culture Ken Burns.
Well, thank you. It's an honor. I'll have to tell Ken what he thinks, and he's like, I don't know who you are, and stay away from me.
Don't worry, he never replies to any of my tweets or anything.
Yeah, he never responds to you either. I keep on saying, "Am I the Ken Burns Jr.?" And I keep on getting these cease and desist notices.
You got to talk about baseball and jazz.
Yeah, it's a commonality amongst really smart guys who do research. No.
Well, thank you.
Well, no problem at all. Now, a couple other things. I'm really excited about some of the notes that I took in terms. Can I go on to, because the deadline for being a backer is on the 31st, right?
Halloween at midnight, just a couple days away.
Okay, so some people will turn into a pumpkin, and some people will be a backer. Is what I
It's either or. There is no in between. But if you are wearing this mask, or this mask, you will melt and turn into cockroaches and snakes and other types of bugs.
It's almost time, kiddies.
Allison, which mask are you going to be wearing?
The ghost?
Okay. All right. So David,
we have to bring the choices back.
The ghost, the witch, or the pumpkin.
Oh, the pumpkin. The pumpkin.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Any of these choices will spell your doom if you watch the special broadcast at 9:00.
It's if the tag works, right?
Yeah, that's a Halloween 3 reference for those who love Halloween 3, which turned 40 years old just a couple days ago. But
1982.
Yeah. How right, your favorite year, I know that. Halloween midnight is the deadline to get In Search of Darkness Part 3 at 80shorrordoc.com. And the reason why the deadline is Halloween at midnight is the film is done, but we have not done the end credits. And what we'd like to do is we have a final, pretty much purchase / get us over the line. We're a small company. Creator VC is a small team where we make and manufacture and distribute all of this stuff ourselves. And so you can't just sort of have a big storeroom and send things out or manufacture on demand. It's cost prohibitive. So the idea is we have a big sale. We know how many that we can order, and we can get it out to everybody. Digital copy it comes in the end of November, and then it gets shipped right after that. But what you do is, get in under the wire, Halloween at midnight, and you will get your name in the credits, which is super cool. So whether you want your name, you want your podcast, you want your favorite animal, you want a loved one. This will be a cherished memory. And what's really cool about this is that, you can get In Search of Darkness 3 and you get all the cool swag and get like a trio of amazing posters, digital download, digital soundtrack, a variety of other cool things. But if you missed In Search of Darkness Part 1 or Part 2, you can get either of those, or you can get a box set and a slipcase and get like a trilogy set, which is super cool. And then there's one more thing that I want everyone to do. I invite everyone here to do it because the community really dictated what the content was going to be for this. We literally had everybody, I'm sure you guys were part of this, where everyone filled out a survey where they listed the movies that they'd like to see, because we're doing a Part 3, and people voted on it. There was a poll. Don't want to reveal all the winners and what the rankings were, because I want it all to be surprises, but it basically told me everything that I need to know about what should be in this film. And so a way of giving back for me, which I think is super cool, is again, do this by Halloween at midnight. I would like everyone to videotape themselves talking about why 80s horror is so important to you. From the heart, why a film or a filmmaker or In Search of Darkness, but you don't have to brownie point us. We just want you to speak from the heart. And what we're going to do, because we've got these long end credits, can't promise everyone's going to be in it, but we're going to pack as many as possible from top to bottom of everyone talking about why 80s horror is so important to everyone and to yourself, and why you connect with it on a personal level. And in order to do that, you go to any of our socials, 80s Horror Doc on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. There's that Linktree link at the top. Just click on that and you'll see exactly what the specifics are to submit your video and how long it should be and all that kind of stuff. But I invite you guys to do it. I would love for you to do it. And everybody listening, you know, and I'd love to put you in the end credits.
That's super cool. The In Search of Darkness community alone, or the In Search of community, is amazing. I've been involved in the Q&A stuff in the community with both the In Search of Darkness and In Search of Tomorrow stuff, and it's just like friends hanging out. And the idea of being able to make a video and share that with the people that you may or may not have been talking to this whole time is just a really cool, community thing to do. And
there's the Discord community. We have watch parties every Sunday. It's a like-minded fans just chatting about how much we all love these movies and sharing our collectibles and toys, like I just did. It's just real fun, and you feel very much a part of the community. We also do backer events, as In Search of Darkness or In Search of Project. We're doing this with Aliens Expanded now. We have backer events, we have Q&As, we bring in talent sometimes to talk, but it's a transparent process where we try and involve everybody, and you guys can affect the trajectory of the projects we're doing based on your enthusiasm and your ideas, and we love being able to do that. So we're very different from other folks who are just raising money and then they go in their corner and they do their project and then they may or may not deliver. We want to make it a whole year community event where once we crowdfund, we come to now and we get to deliver a movie, but we've done so many cool things in between and brought a lot of people together to talk about just fandom and their favorite subject.
Well, that's awesome. We're quickly running out of time, so I wanted to thank you again for coming onto the show. You're so much fun to talk to.
Thank you.
Your movies have struck a big chord with not only me, but a lot of people that I've talked to that I know. And I can't tell you how many times a week I watch your movies because it's a lot. It's literally daily. I'll have.
Do you really watch this daily?
Yeah, I'll have one of the three on like all the time, every day.
Yeah, that's not a line he actually Allison can attribute to that. I can vouch for that. Yeah.
I asked this genuinely. Like, what is the appeal to play it so often? What is it? What does it give? What is it? A comfort blanket thing, or
yeah?
What does it do for you?
It kind of is. It's kind of a comfort. When I first watched the first one, I sat there for the entire 4 hours and didn't realize that I sat there for the 4 hours, and I was so entertained that I watched it again right afterwards. And it was just so much. It felt like I was one of them when they were talking. I felt like I was part of this because it was a subject that was dear to me, and then I just. Especially when it came on Shudder. When it came on Shudder, I was like, oh, that's it. Even though I own them in hard copy and digitally, and I send them out to people. I probably shouldn't. I probably should get them to buy them. But yeah, I watch it daily, and I can quote stuff like the Corey Taylor stuff and other people talking. Like I can't watch Scanners now without hearing Corey be like, Cronenberg, dude. And it's just amazing how, and I learn something new every time I watch it, even though I watch them nearly daily. It's just awesome, and I really appreciate what you've done, I appreciate how you treat your fans, how you treat the community, and that's it for my final words.
I'm touched. I mean, I all I could say is thank you, but I'm just so glad that it means something to you, and for the variety of reasons that you explained.
And you inspired me to start my own documentary.
1982. I know that's a passion project, and the key word is passion.
Yes.
These projects are very hard. I was going to say, as a former journalist and maybe still journalist, but as a filmmaker now, when I first made this In Search of Darkness movie, I poured my heart into it. We all did. Our whole team did, because we're very passionate about the material. And while we hope for the best, we just are too pleased to. I'm kind of at a loss for words. We really hoped it would resonate with at least some people. And the best thing one can ever hope for is word of mouth, because you really enjoy it. And I think these movies take us back to a time that was very important for all of us. Whether we saw it in the theater, whether we rented it, after go searching the video store, whether we saw it on cable, or whether someone showed it to us yesterday for the first time. These movies are more than just a movie. It's about the experience you have with the people and the place and the time in your life, and what these movies mean to you in terms of entertainment or escape. And I think that's the power that's way beyond what we're doing, but it's the power collectively of these films. And to see people who are part of it celebrating it. I keep on using that word, celebration, but it's true. Just to have everyone, to have John Carpenter say, well, I was too busy in the 80s seeing movies, but I sure love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That was a great one. Like, we don't hear him talk about that kind of stuff. And that's, just fun to have.
Yeah. One of my favorite little quips was Mick Garris talking about how Steven Spielberg loved Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and he hired Tobe Hooper to do Poltergeist because of that. And you don't hear that in any interviews ever. And
it humanizes all these people. They're movie fans just like us. No one wants to work in movies unless you love movies. It just doesn't happen. That's the way the industry works. We're all movie fans. Some are wilder movie fans, some are less, but we're all fundamentally children of the theater and the cinema, who just love storytelling. And this is like the perfect way to do it. And so to be able to assemble just, the most amazing cast, now, over 100 people, probably 120, 130 people I've spoken to over 3 films now, to talk about this stuff is just, it's an absolute gift for me personally to be able to collect these, have these people collected in one long form documentary. That's an exploration of a decade. And to have you watch this and feel like you're part of the conversation is the ultimate compliment.
Well, it's true. Roman, what you got any final words here?
I get to follow up that? Seriously? The monologue? This is where you insert the quippy guy who has some quick joke to tie it all together, I think, right? Okay, well, unfortunately, I don't have a quip. I think that's just a beautiful way. Real quick, I was going to ask, real quick, just to help out my friend. In 1982, if all the films were being obliterated from memory, and you had to pick one horror movie that more than likely is in one of your fantastic long documentaries, what 1982 specific horror movie would you choose, and why?
I think that's a great movie. A great question.
Thank you.
I think The Thing pops to mind, but The Thing is arguably a hybrid of sci-fi and horror, so that means I get to choose one more. And the other one would be Creepshow.
Nice.
Because Creepshow is a great anthology, so you get to have 5 movies in one, but it's got a sense of humor and it's also a great example of Tom Savini's wonderful effects. You know, the hybrid of Savini, Stephen King, George Romero, all working together. So it means more than just an anthology movie that came out that year. So it kind of covers more bases if you want to be able to save something from the burning building of 1982, you know? So I would choose both, but obviously one of those canisters is going to slip out of my arm as I run out the door, and I can't tell you which one does. One does, but they're both unmarked, so I won't find out until I open the canister. But then I won't be able to tell you.
You got to save Ed Harris's dancing.
Exactly. All right, I'll ask you: who has the better dance sequence? Is it Ed Harris in Creepshow? Is it Crispin Glover in Friday the 13th Part 4, I want to say?
Yeah.
Or is it Jamie Lee Curtis in Prom Night Disco Dancing?
Oh man.
I vote Jamie Lee Curtis, absolutely, where she looks very stern. She goes, let's show them. Allison, what do you think? Who has better dancing? Go ahead.
The only one I've seen out of all those is Prom Night.
Oh, so. There you go. Okay, so you can weigh in on that. I think I would have to pick Crispin Glover because it's just so odd and wonderful and so Crispin Glover that you know, maybe that's the reason to see that movie alone compared to all the other stuff.
Do you think
then I'll go Ed Harris then. You know, I need to give Creepshow some love too.
Yeah.
Oh man, that just gives some people who are just rhythm challenged such hope.
I request that you do a poll on Twitter, you know, and I'd love to see the results.
It'll happen tonight.
But Allison, any parting thoughts, observations, or
I'm excited because unlike Adam, and I guess unlike Roman, but more so Adam, I wasn't a big horror person growing up in the 80s. So that's why I lovingly call some of these movies the bloody explosion creature movies, because that just wasn't my thing. So the majority of the movies in Part 3, I probably have never even heard of. So that will be very interesting to watch and see if I will can be introduced to something new.
Have you seen Jaws: The Revenge?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's one for you.
All right, good. All right.
You heard it here.
Huh?
You heard it here. Jaws: The Revenge, and not Pulse.
Yeah. So
I only brought up Pulse because I mention it to people and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I listen. I will let the cat out of the bag, and I just feel badly because I don't want you waiting, and then you just be one of the disappointed collective folks angry at me because I didn't put Pulse in the movie.
It's okay.
But it was on. Listen, it was on my list. It was definitely on my list. But I'm not even going to mention more names, but there are some movies. Here's what happens in the tail end of the 80s, the last 3 or 4 years, 86, but especially 87, 88, 89. The number of horror films collectively, it's like a hockey stick. It's like on a chart, you know. It just explodes because people are cluing in that horror sells, and so many more films are made, especially when people could put it straight on video. And so when I get to the second half of the decade and I have to choose, especially even after Part 1 and Part 2, and now I'm on Part 3, there's so many of these films I'm like, well, if I do this, then that's got to go. I literally can't fit them all. So I made some choices with some films that I promised myself I was going to put in, where I'm just like, I just, you know, I wish I could do it, but I just don't have time. And, you know, sometimes it's relative to, you know, particular talent you might have, you know? And so like, if I'm talking to Kathleen Wilhoit, you know, who is talking about Witchboard, but she was also in Dream Demon. If I had got to put Dream Demon in there, because she talks about what it was like to make Dream Demon, and I'll bet a lot less people have seen Dream Demon than have seen Witchboard. So then that knocks a well-known film out when it's experts talking about it, because I had someone from the cast talking about one of their films. And even sometimes when I had some cast member talking about their own films and I wanted to include them in a year, there were other movies that just knocked it out. And I'm just like, well, I've got them at least in one or two other segments. Unfortunately, I just can't continue on. So these are, listen, there are tough problems in life that we all experience, but these are my problems when I make these films is I have to make some real tough choices. And sometimes I even have the material and it ends up on the cutting room floor because it just can't fit.
Well, you know, 15 hours, 20 hours if you include In Search of Tomorrow of movies. I'm not going to complain if something I know is missing. It's so well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, he says 15 hours. What I'm hearing is In Search of Darkness 4 could be just saying. Just saying. But if we as fans want that movie, if we want In Search for, I know you got other things in your back pocket, but we really got to go to 80shorrordoc.com before midnight. And also something that I heard from the other interviews, was there like a card, like a membership card?
Yeah, there's so if you go to 80shorrordoc.com, you can see all the cool things that you can get in the package that comes in addition to having the physical copy in your hands. Here's the thing about the physical copy. You know, streaming comes and streaming goes, or streaming doesn't even happen. But when you have a physical copy in your hand and it's only available for a limited time, you'll find on eBay, it's supply and demand, and the price gets very high. There's some really cool stuff. You got the trio of posters, you've got the digital downloads. We thought, how cool would it be, because this is really all about the video store nostalgia. We have what looks like a videotape video membership card, and it gives you access to a bunch of deals from merchants that horror merch from horror merchants. So you'll see all sorts of deals that you can get, on and incentives to buy other cool stuff that we've partnered with. And that's another cool thing that we plan to sustain as well. So, once you have this card, we can continue adding partners who will give us discounts, whether it's, I don't want to name names because I don't want to specify one and not the other, but, a discount to a certain thing that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise.
Yeah, go ahead.
One last thing I wanted to say, in regards to the stuff you get, Creator VC has been really cool with their customer service too. When I got my copy of In Search of Darkness 2, my posters were all bent and creased, and I brought it up, and they're like, "We'll just send you some new ones." And it was like, prove it. It wasn't anything like that. It was just like,
we know what it's like. We know it's very hard for a small company. I think I'm saying what's kind of obvious, but I think people don't think about that. We're a small company, so we take a hit when we fulfill something a second time.
Yeah.
Because something that once it's out of our hands, we have no control over. And if, Jim Carrey from Ace Ventura is delivering your package and kicking it across the lawn, nothing you could do about it, But listen, in between us sending it out into, letting our baby out into the world and it ending up on your doorstep, things happen. Yep. And so we know that it's not, it's your hard-earned money that you're voting with to continue, for us to continue these projects and, to purchase this project. And it's important for us that you're satisfied and not disappointed. And our reputation is very important to us, and goodwill is important as well. And, you want to be able to rely on us. And so, another project comes along. If you're like, well, we sent you posters and they all got mashed and you didn't care, what's the incentive to keep on, supporting our projects? And I understand that. And, Creator VC and Robin Block, they really, 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 really work hard behind the scenes. Just the fulfillment is very complicated for a project like this when you're doing it yourself. It's very complicated. It's very expensive. Shipping, very expensive. I mean, I don't want to go down this whole rabbit hole. It's not fun to talk about. I'm here to talk about the content and the entertainment, but there's a whole other side to doing this stuff yourself where you want to make sure that everyone is happy at the end of the project. And so we do our best to give everyone a smile with great content and a great package of material.
Well, that's awesome. So thank you again for joining us. 80shorrordoc.com. We'll put it all over the screen. We'll put it all over our links. You've got till midnight on Halloween to be in the credits.
And tell your friends, and recommend this to whoever you like, and sharing is caring. Be kind, rewind. I'm just gonna rhyme now until we're done. But yeah, I appreciate you guys and all your support, and it's fun. It's fun being able to get the feedback that you guys give me, just what you appreciate about it. But most importantly, you guys are really into this stuff, and it's very clear. And, when you do a podcast talking about your favorite stuff and pop culture and movies and just everything that you love to just soak up in your life, the conversation, it's good to have positive, discourse about this kind of stuff. And encourage fandom. And I'm just going to say these things in general, but it's like support indie filmmaking, but also support franchises. Support Halloween Ends, support Smile and Barbarian, and the big things. Whether it's a reboot or a remake or a franchise, by supporting that kind of stuff, if you can with your dollar, that will enable a lot of independent material and content, because once they have enough money to know that they're secure to just work as a studio or a company, they can put out original content as well as this tentpole movies that are required to keep them in business. Really, does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I'm sort of getting tangential here, but it's just like support film. Don't crap all over things if you don't agree with it or if you don't like it. I'm not saying you guys do. I'm just sort of on my little soapbox now, because I just think there's so much out there now. It's very easy to say, well, this isn't what I want.
Yeah.
So it's terrible and I hate it, and you should too, because I wanted to say it on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's important to support all sorts of filmmakers, especially if you love storytelling and entertainment.
Well, our motto on this podcast is celebrating cinema one episode at a time, and that's what we do. We celebrate cinema, and sometimes it's not for you, sometimes it's for someone else, but that doesn't mean it's bad. And that's what I tell. I have all these little colloquialisms like every movie is somebody's favorite movie. And
yeah. Well, just to bring it back to 80s horror, this is like the best example in the world of it, because we all know, even if we will champion any title, that it's probably like low on the totem pole for the average person who's like, really, you like that and you watch that over and over? We all know that, and we're all used to that. But this is about, again, it's bigger than the movie. It's about why we love the experience of just having been there and having watched it, and who we were with. And it's comfort food. You can't listen, you can knock McDonald's all day long, but I went straight for my boo bucket, last week. And we all know why, because it's nostalgia and it's fun and we get to be kids again,
Well, I don't know where I would be in my life right now without the first In Search of Darkness, not to mention In Search of Darkness 2, In Search of Tomorrow. And I really appreciate the work you, Robin, have done.
Yeah.
And thanks again for joining us. Remember, 80shorrordoc.com by midnight on Halloween. And also, don't forget to submit your videos. That would be really cool to see people on the in the credits, during the credits.
Yeah, speak from your heart. Listen, don't feel obligated to say things about In Search of Darkness just to get picked. I just want to hear you say, I love this and it means something to me because, because we don't give you a lot of time because we want to include as many people as possible. So just speak from the heart, and it'll shine through. And I encourage everybody to do that. And you can find that in the link tree on our socials at 80s Horror Doc on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And please do it also by Halloween night.
Yeah. One more thing, when you're talking about get it up on the credits there. Allison showed me today the trailer, one of the trailers for part 3, and it had one of my tweets in it, and I got real excited about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Listen, we love when people say that they love us and why, because it's really marketing these things is very much about the fan experience. And people like to see other fans. Well, it's like, listen, we all can see a commercial for a product, but what do we do these days? We go straight to the reviews to hear what the real people say about whatever the product is or the movie or what have you. You go straight to those reviews to see what the honest opinion is. And when people are just genuinely happy and they're excited about these projects, we're more than happy to share that kind of stuff because I think the fans speak the loudest.
Well, continue doing what you do because you do it well. And hopefully we'll see you again for, I don't know, In Search of Tomorrow 2.
Yeah, I'm hoping to do In Search of Tomorrow 2. That's definitely on the horizon. We're also in early development on In Search of Darkness 90s. That's in the works as well. I can't tell you what's next. I can tell you what's next. Aliens Expanded is probably the next thing out of the gate. We also have FPS, first person shooter. I'm not involved with that, but that's Creator VC. So it's very much, within our network as well. Go to Creator VC and check out the projects we're doing. And, next thing I'll be doing is trick-or-treating and taking a nap.
Well, you deserve it. You've got all your hard work to pay for it. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Roman. Thank you, Allison, for joining us. And thank you once again, David, for joining us. And we'll see you next time. And remember, always celebrate cinema.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.